just turning on the stream, seeing. It looks like we're live here. It looks a little laggy.
Still a little jumpy. Okay. Well, that's we're gonna have to just.
Yeah, but
the content can speak for itself.
It'll be a podcast. Yeah, exactly. As long as people audio podcast, worst case scenario. So,
do you have a favorite Pokemon to use in PvP? Like one Pokemon that's better than anything else?
Do I have a favorite Pokemon to use in PvP? Not too much, to be honest, because maybe I'm trying to think. Because when I think about my PvP, over my course of my PvP career, there's some Pokemon that I really favored, I really liked. Like I really liked Shadow Hypno and Shadow Abomasnow really early on. And then of course I loved using Sableye, and it was a big part of my indie team. But like when I think about my PvP career, like when I started out, it was like playing a lot of Sylph, right? So like every month you're like playing a new meta, right? And you're like learning all these new Pokemon and whatnot. And then when I played GBL, like I don't typically stick with one team. Like I typically take team suggestions or I run unique stuff. So for me, it's like I haven't like played a ton of like any one particular Pokemon to like gain a huge appreciation for it. There's some Pokemon I like running Trepion and Ultra. If you play any cups, of course you love Frostlass.
Yeah.
But no particular Pokemon I would say like, okay, this is like for sure I want to play.
I remember back when you originally walked away from PvP during the Sylph days, and I remember when GBL came out, you came out with a video saying, I'm going to use 75 unique Pokemon, and if I get X amount of wins, I'm going to come back to making Pokemon.
Yeah.
And then I remember you were doing so well at the start that you were like, I might just, change the target.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then I got swept by a Rhyhorn. And
that's right.
One of my first.
There was so many Lapras at the beginning of GBL.
Yeah. It's a very bulky Pokemon, so I think the people's understanding of metas and whatnot has changed so much since the early days. So
thanks to the work,
and as well like team,
yourself and Wallower and a bunch of people like that.
Yeah, exactly.
What made you want to get into content in the first place?
I think like I've always liked sharing my journey in some form or another. I always like sharing my journey. Like maybe like before like all the YouTube stuff, I used to do like a lot of talks at like university classrooms or helping people with their career or direction they want to take, or even when I was in university, just like doing talks on like how to help people study and all that stuff. So I think for me, it was just like sharing my journey and my progression, and then kind of just evolve from there as like different things happen and different. Yeah, like because my content has like changed a lot for me over the course of playing Pokemon Go. Like at the beginning, it was like mostly about like grinding and hitting these like 100 million XP milestones, 100,000 catches and all that stuff. Then it started going on to like raid challenges and doing duos and solos. Then PvP came along, and that's just where it's been since.
Just swept you away. I also remember you introducing me to the what was the it was something to do with raiding. It was I remember a video that you did featuring Peggy Snail as one of the best raiders in the world.
Yeah. Best soloist in the world.
Yeah, soloist. That's
Just like breaking down the mechanics, timing, like when to throw, energy, all that stuff. I really liked. For me, I really appreciate breaking down game mechanics and seeing where people can optimize in like a really tight spots.
Yeah, and it's seems like it's the same thing as PvP, where it's like to a layman, it just seems like tapping. And then
Yeah, for sure. It definitely like I think for like really exciting games, like as you see in like at least when I go to these regionals, I'm sure you should experience the same thing in Perth, right? Like when you see like really exciting games, like even like people that are not really like too crazy into it can like get into it. Like I saw like when it was in Vancouver, right? Like all the judges and all these different people were so into it. They like understood if the game was really exciting and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for sure, for definitely to a lot of other people, like when you're just out there battling, like it just feels like it's tapping. And it's like just guessing. Obviously, winning the lead is part of it, but obviously there's other components to it that helps it make people successful and as well make games exciting.
Do you have any thoughts on how to on any kind of little adjustments that could be made that would make PvP a little less lead dependent? That which is a big question to ask when it's just a preamble.
Yeah.
But
No. I think there's pretty easy ways to make it less lead dependent. So one is like shorter clocks, right? Because like if you by having shorter clocks, when you get switch lock, it's less punishing, right? Because then literally the Pokemon stays in there less, and as well you can create more imbalances in the game in terms of like catching moves, right? Taking advantage of every single. So that's like one way to make it less lead dependent, and as well, like in theory, if like Pokemon are bulkier or like then there's like less lead dependence, right? Because then you can there's less lead dependence. So like something like in Ultra League is for me, I prefer, and this is maybe a controversial point of view, but I prefer playing Ultra League more than Great League.
No, not controversial at all.
And mostly not because of the meta or the Pokemon, right? Obviously, there's accessibility issues in relation to it, but like for me, it's like if a Pokemon, like really glassy Pokemon, end up getting one-shotted by like hard-hitting neutral moves, right? Like that's just the reality, right? So like at least in Ultra League, they can like survive it. So if they like farm down and whatnot, they can convert the energy and like actually take a move, which I think is it's really important. So like I think like you can make it less lead dependent in one, shorter clocks, and then two, like if you look at the mechanics of PvP, if you look at like the damage formula is actually very similar to it is in raids and in gym battles, but the main difference is in PvP they do like a 1.3 multiplier at the end of the and well they add the +1, but they do a 1.3 multiplier for the damage, which in theory like makes Pokemon glassier because obviously Pokemon don't hit as hard. Like a very simple way would just to flip that and obviously make the matchups longer. They're potentially more like timeout threats that don't really exist too much in Great League that might end up happening in Great League if you were to change it. But I think that's like my two main ideas that I would say to make it less lead dependent.
Could you see having a different multiplier for different leagues being viable?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, I'm not confident Niantic can easily pull that off without making some really gruesome errors. But but it's a thought. I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Like, I don't think you need any multiplier changes for Ultra League. In fact, I think you need to increase the clock time. But for Great League, I would love to see it to go from like 1.3 to 1.1 or even just 1. Just so like I'm just like it just sucks to see glassy Pokemon just get one-shotted, right? So like it kind of probably like hardening neutral move. So like it sucks to see like a Surfetch get pretty much one-shotted by a Zap Cannon from Registeel, right? Like that's just
totally agree. So. All right, so let's get into the meat of the show. You're here to talk to any future regionals competitors, future regionals champions, and help them work out what team they want to bring to their upcoming regionals. I know we have Ohio coming up in, what, a couple of weeks or something like that?
Yeah, in about like probably 3 weeks.
3 weeks,
2.5 weeks from that. And then obviously we have Melbourne and
Melbourne this weekend.
Milwaukee.
Is Milwaukee coming first?
Milwaukee is I think the week after Melbourne.
The week after.
So it goes like Melbourne, Milwaukee, Ohio.
Yeah. Okay. So first we want to know: do you have any kind of general overarching rules that you bring to your approach in building a team of 6 for any sort of pick 6 meta?
For me, I think it depends. I think there's like two, at least when I view it like 2 different ways you can approach it. One is you can create a balanced team that has only a few holes, like a few key Pokemon that might be able to core break your team, right? That's like one approach. The other approach is to have like a much more like alignment based approach, right? Where like you have like much more fast move pressure. So like Pokemon with like Charm, for example, right? Where you're confident that you can formulate a strategy where you can have alignment, which there's a lot of, especially in, I think GBL encourages that strategy more, right? And so a lot of players are very, very, like a lot of elite battlers are very comfortable with that strategy. So I think you can take those like 1 or 2 approaches. So, but for me, it's like no like hard and fast rule when it comes to building your team. Obviously, utilize all the various tools that I know you have a PV Poke up on there, but no. But besides that, like I think you gotta decide like which approach you want to take, and both of them can be pretty valid.
How much do you use to, for context? We've had a couple of interviews with past regionals champs. We had Logan Rocket on, who was like, I actually don't pay much attention to PV Poke. Like I was looking at, we were bringing up a team and it was like A, B, and he's like, yeah, but that doesn't really mean much. And then we had Aris, who completely relied on PV Poke. He was just like, yeah, I put in the like 3 Pokemon that I want, and then whatever team builder recommends for me, I pop that in. If I have a couple of thoughts on maybe something that would be a better replacement, then I'll do that. But then otherwise team builder is my go-to. Are you somewhere in between those?
Definitely probably more theories, but I do work with working individuals too. So I work with Leandro to help build the team. So I proposed a team first based off of PV Poke and said like, okay, these are like the weaknesses that I have, right? And we just talked about it. Okay, if you run into this Pokemon or this particular team, then you have to learn how to deal with it. And then you do a bunch of practice matches, and you say like, then I consult with him, saying like, okay, I had a lot of trouble with this team. This core seemed really strong against these ones, and then we kind of like just like bounce ideas in terms of it. But we're in that sense like we're leveraging PV Poke to see what the obvious holes are.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like play it like Legend Rock says, like you can have an obvious hole, but you got to learn how you can play around it and what the matchups are and whatnot. Is it like bait dependent? Is it a very straightforward matchup? Et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah.
So definitely in between. Like I'm not like 100% relying on PV Poke or not as in depth use as Aries, but certainly it's a tool that most people should be using.
So it sounds like it's just a workshopping process, starting with PV Poke, then going with like theory crafting, and then play testing, and then repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so your indie team. I'm gonna very slowly bring this up because my computer is having a tantrum this morning and everything's going slowly, but I will very slowly bring your team up on the screen. If you want to talk about how you went about constructing that team.
Yeah. So originally the team I had proposed, right? So was like I forget the exact team, but it was like Shadow Swampert, Walrein, Registeel, Mandibuzz, Sableye, and one other Pokemon. But anyways, I had actually no counter users on my team on my first construct, right? Um, and when I ran that team, I was like so weak to Walrein. And I just like almost every team has Walrein, right? So it's like when I was doing my practice scrims, I just kept running Walrein. And I'm like, okay, if I don't align it properly or I get bait called wrong in the Walrein mirror, then I was like in a lot of trouble. So then, we discussed that with Leandro, and then he asked me like what core I really liked. So I said I really like Sableye Walrein core. And then we kind of built it out from there. Then we decided whether or not to have Shadow Walrein or regular Walrein. We just talked about like shield pressure and whatnot. So then we went back and forth, and we ended up he ended up suggesting this pick your team. And then as I was practicing, the team went really well. And then I think at some point in time, and I saw this in Vancouver. I won't say names, but where you're changing the team last second, I think is like probably not advisable. I think at some point in time, you're like 36 hours away from the tournament, 24 hours away from the tournament. You just have to lock in the team.
Yeah.
You just like have to, right? Like you can't be changing or adjusting your team like even the day before. I wouldn't advise. And you just gotta live with that. Your team, if you run into this particular Pokemon, you just gotta practice against it. So like for me, my particular team like really struggle against Lickitung. So like basically Lickitung can almost beat my entire team in like the 2-shield matchup. And the Registeel one, PvPoke shows that it wins in the 2-shield, but that's if you go like straight Focus Blast and whatnot. But like if you go straight Zapcan, you actually win that one. So like learning how to play against like Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen is also really challenging for me. Charm Alolan Ninetales, which you saw in my indie run, I really struggled to play against. So or like the Defense Deoxys, if they had Defense Deoxys and Charm Ninetales, then it made it really, really challenging for me. So you just got to practice against those ones. And if you run into it, then you just got to have a particular game plan and then hope as well that you have a little bit of luck on your side to be able to make the right calls and the right leads to play against it.
Did you, were for example, things like the DD A9 core, were they things that you did think of beforehand, or were they things that you... Go on.
Yeah. So for example, DD, so against like Party Marty's team, right? It was actually a similar team that I had seen before, except for like the Skarmory. He had like some more like off meta, like not core meta picks, I should say. So like for the DD, I actually had known that matchup against Azu from like one of my coaching sessions, and I knew I could win the 1 and 2 shield if they had Thunderbolt and Psycho Boost straight Ice Beam. So I had like sim that match. I already knew that match ahead of time, so I knew I had a particular game plan. Okay, if I run into that particular matchup, I'm gonna go straight Ice Beam, even though Play Rough is more energy efficient, just because like you get to the moves, you're able to outpace the DD if you go straight Ice Beam, and then you just have to. Usually they don't bait, right? So then usually just play out those particular matchups and kind of have a strategy against it. DD is also like not necessarily easy to bring against my team as well because I have double ghost, but if you have the Charm Ninetales and they have the right alignment, it can be really, really challenging.
Was there anything that you came up against that you hadn't tested for and hadn't theorized against that surprised you and you had to work it out on the fly?
I guess like I didn't expect like I expected more like each of the metas really get really changed, like the core meta's there, right? Like the Open Great League is only so many Pokemon that you can use, right? The core meta's there, but there's always like slight adjustments. Like you saw like in Lurgan Rockets one, like Scrafty was like a very popular pick, right? And then Frankfurt, it was like half Scrafty, half Metacham, right? And then in Indie, it was like almost all Metacham as counter
Yeah.
users, right? So like I actually wasn't expecting too many DDs, but DD is a very popular Pokemon, so I already had an idea of how to particularly play against it. But besides that, nothing like too surprising in terms of most of the people I ran against, played against, had like pretty meta teams, so it was relatively straightforward to play against.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into the next point I had, which was how you think the meta is evolving from here. You've talked about how it has evolved in the past regionals up to the point of Indianapolis. We've had
Yeah.
like Vancouver since then as well, when we obviously saw the rise of Ember Ninetales.
Yeah.
Where do you think is the next step?
Well, I think it's always a hard call on which direction people will take it, whether or not they'll like really hard adjust against fire, because like fire was like I shoutcasted Cindy's run. There was like so many of her matches, like Ember Ninetales or fire in general, which is so safe against the other team, right? So whether or not people will make adjustments, whether they'll choose to bring more Zoom rolls or more Swamperds or whatnot to adjust to the teams, we'll see. Or whether or not people will try to counter that and maybe bring more, like expecting more people to adjust to bring more water Pokemon. You might see more Trevenant or other grass types that you haven't seen previously.
Yeah, so it's like, how many steps ahead do you want to think?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there is a bit of a kind of a square forming between Araquanid, like Registeel, Nidoqueen, and Swampert / Walrein. So like obviously they will go around countering each other, and I feel like that is gonna be that's gonna determine things moving forward. That's my thoughts anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think Arachnid. Well, thank goodness it was slightly nerfed. Not it was pretty big nerf, right? Because otherwise, Arachnid and Registeel core would have been like
Just
way
nuts.
too disgustingly strong, right? I guess like the Talonflame would fire would still break that core, but it would. Well, I guess if they had bubble still, like oh man, it would be such a difficult Pokemon to game plan against, right? So thankfully it was nerfed, or otherwise it would have been the cores would have been way too strong and it would have been way too centralized.
Yeah, thanks, Niantic.
But yeah, for sure. Like we'll see how. The thing is like the players do necessarily like go far in these tournaments will like learn to play around these weaknesses. So like you see times where people have like really clear team disadvantages, but are still able to win the best of 3 or best of 5. So even if you like end up like lining up with like your worst counters, like there's still a chance for people to play around it. Team building is really important and really critical. And first off, like not having like too many obvious weaknesses, but also another important part of team building, in my opinion, is like being comfortable with your team, like having a degree of confidence in your team, and then not recognizing that when you go into a particular team that you have an advantage or disadvantage, but learning to optimize it as much as possible to increase your likelihood of winning, versus like just like it doesn't necessarily mean that you like when I went up against the Party Marty's team, it was a really difficult team for me to play against, and I was telling myself like, man, I'm gonna have to sometimes you just have to outplay your opponent, right? That's like the only way to win, right? Like you can't play a neutral matchup and then hope you come out on top just because like their team comp is and as well sometimes you just have to make some guesses to and make some predictions and live with the risks, whether or not it'll turn out right or wrong on your side.
Yeah, totally. In Party Marty's example, how much did you, or really in kind of a lot of your opponents' cases, like how much do you put into what you think your opponent is thinking, for example? It might be a tough
sorry,
question.
sorry. It's like the audio is kind of cutting in and out. So
okay, cool. Yeah. So, you knew going into the matchup with Party Marty that that your team was going to struggle a bit against his. How much did your knowledge of what Party Marty knows affect your decisions in what Pokemon you brought into each battle and how you played it?
That's a
tough question.
Okay, that's a good question. So like, and back at the beginning of the tournament, Party Marty and Doombug were like the second match on stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there was a lot of like internet struggles and Wi-Fi struggles. So like my match wasn't for a while. So I had a chance to watch Party Marty versus Doombug. And when I saw Party Marty's team, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm really gonna struggle against that team.
Yeah.
If we end up getting paired off, right? But I'm like, looking at the bracket, I'm like, okay, the likelihood of me playing Party Marty is like pretty slim because we basically had like run the table, right, all the way to the winners final in our particular group, which ended up happening, right? So I already knew when I had beat Spicy that I was gonna have to play Party Marty, and just like at that point in time, I just like you just had to like, okay, I had to play this particular strategy, trying to make some reads. I had also shoutcasted Party Marty's battles for a particular tournament run, and I knew he was like a very precise player, very technically skilled player, and he had brought an interesting team, which was for me is going to be a struggle to play against. So I knew I just had to like play slightly unpredictably, play pretty aggressive, kind of put him on his back foot as much as possible, which is always tough against really good players that
of course,
like know how to play
play
precisely, right?
Yeah.
So, but and in the for example, in the first game, I just made like a really good prediction on his bigger team and basically just was able to sweep with Registeel. And then the second game, I knew what he had in the back. I knew he had a Charm Ninetales in the back. So when I had Insta swapped and his Charm Ninetales came out, for me, I kind of like that was like I had like lapse in my brain because I was okay. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play the one shield Azumarill versus A9, and that should be totally fine. But then when he no shielded A9, I'm like, it actually really shocked me. Like, and then he was just gonna play two shield Sableye, and then I kind of all my calculations went out the door, and yeah. So and then in game 3, when we played Azu versus DD in the lead. So first off, when I play Azu and DD, I'm like, okay, I know how to win the one shield, and then but I noticed that he really liked to throw an alignment. Right, he was like really confident in his ability to deny fast moves. Right,
yeah,
right. And I saw that in his game against Doombug and in earlier games. So like when he stayed, I knew that he was gonna have answers to Sableye in the back, and I had Sableye in the back. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna catch a move. I'm gonna catch a move on Reggie. I'm gonna catch a Thunderbolt on Reggie from DD. So it's like, for me, it was like if you look at it like without knowing the backlines, it's like a crazy idea to switch Registeel into DD. But I'm like, okay, I need this Azumarill for later. Like I just need it for later. So then I'm catching the move, and then he came Sableye, and he didn't actually end up having Charm A9 in the back, which I thought he was going to have. He ended up having Umbreon, and you just have then you just kind of keep playing it out. You play really aggressively, and fortunately, I was able to just barely come out with a win.
Is that what you? Because when you won, one of the things that you said was like, I felt a little rusty. Is that kind of what you had in mind? Situations like that?
Yeah. So for me, I felt rusty because like one, I hadn't played in like a really like when I look at these players, right, like that attended the tournament, and I look at players that had won previous tournaments, they had like played like quite a bit of self previously, right? I think like look at Liverpool, like the finals is like Legend Rocket versus Statistan.
Yeah.
Like obviously Statistan, like first page self leaderboard entire season. Lurgan Rocket. I think was like a one regional. I think in the previous season,
Yeah.
it was like one of the continental players, right?
Yeah.
Always a. And when I looked at the bracket, like I'm like, okay, I won't be surprised if those two make it to the finals, right? So like they're very. There's also a few other players that were very strong there. And then when I looked in Frankfurt, obviously some players there were didn't have as much self experience and but still played really well. But for me, like leading up to Indy, I had like really busy like 2 weeks. I had like new classes starting and a bunch of other things on the go. So I had not. I basically took the first time I took like my longest break on Twitch which was like 8-9 days and like over the course of 2 years. And as well, I hadn't played any competitive tournaments in 2 weeks. And when I streamed GBL like 2 or 3 days before Indy, I was just like playing terribly. All my timing counts and predictions of matchups were like really off. And then I played like just like a scrim with Dragon Silk. I think we played 17 matches. I lost 16 of those matches.
Oh, that's
he was just like really badly outplaying me. So like I wasn't too certain of that. I had some discussions with Leandro. We adjusted the team, had like some better outcomes in my matches, but it's always really tough to in the show 6 pick 3 format. It's I find it always really challenging to make like predictions on what they're going to bring. You have like, such a short time period to do it. If you've done a lot of tournaments, you can kind of like, okay, you can like read it right away and get an idea of how to play it. And then as well, keeping your nerves while you're battling. I wasn't certain that was all going to play like that. So, but I was fortunate that I had just enough to be able to overcome it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back a step now. We're going to take a look at the potential threats here to your team because a lot of people, I probably myself included, we basically put together a team of 6 and then we look at this page right here. This chart is probably the biggest thing that informs how we make adjustments to that line of 6. So when you look at this chart, what thoughts come to your head? Like, for example, it says 5 out of 6 of this of your team lose to Arachnid. What thoughts go through your head when you see that?
So when I look at this, like, honestly, like, some people were like evaluating the team. I actually don't think like the Arachnid matchup is like that bad.
Yeah.
So in this case, when I would look at this matchup, okay, 5 of 6 it loses, but if you were to like go into each of the sims, what it takes for Arachnid to win is not overly clear, right? Like there's some like bait dependent matchups. So for me, it's not like I would look at this and be, okay, I need to account for Arachnid. For sure, someone's going to bring Arachnid when they play against me. But besides the wall rain matchup, every other matchup is bait and shield dependent. So that in that case, I wouldn't be actually too worried about Arachnid on my team. Obviously, I would practice against it, but I wouldn't be overly concerned with it because it's matchups. It's not super dominant besides the wall rain matchup.
Could you tell that at a glance, or did you have to like go into the matchups to?
So for me, I would know after watching some regional tournaments, like in watching the tournaments and showcasing people's battles in regards to it. But for the other ones, I would actually go and sim it.
Okay, so for those people who maybe aren't as experienced, did you want to maybe pick one of these matchups and just walk us through?
Like for example, if like you go like Metacham in versus Arachnid, which is obviously not a great matchup for Metacham. If you go like the 0 shield, but you don't turn on baits, like they go straight bug buzz, it's actually a really close matchup. It actually loses 0.
Oh, there
so
we go.
like in that particular, so actually PV Poke shows it appropriate. Technically, if you both had 0 shield and it was the end game, technically the Arachnid should bubble beam first, and then it would probably survive and win it that way. But in this matchup, you see that you actually win the 0 shield, right? So like if I had like Metacham and I had wall rain in the back, I'd say I had like Metacham, Registeel, wall rain for whatever reason, and in that particular case, I would just play the 0 shield out. I wouldn't shield at all for the Metacham and just try to get a shield advantage and force the Arachnid to either win switch or to go down a shield and come in Registeel. Obviously, they could switch out but they would still be like low enough that they couldn't steamroll Walray later
Yeah.
on.
And so
So
if
that's an example
yeah,
of a
yeah,
matchup where it looks like on PV Poke initially it's really dominant, but when you dive into the details, it's a little bit more bait dependent, shield dependent, and not as straightforward.
does using the Arachnid Metacham example specifically, would that become a little more difficult if, say, if you were seeing a lot of double ghost, like if double ghost was super
Yep.
common, and maybe they had like Charmer as well, just a whole bunch of counters to Metacham. Does then that take Metacham kind of off the table as a Pokemon that you can use to beat Arachnid because it's just too volatile an environment?
For sure. Like depends on the rest of the team. Like
Yeah.
for example, if like Metacham only had one target and had like two neutral matchups, two negative matchups, and then Arachnid, which is a negative matchup but slightly negative, then it would be way more difficult for me to bring a Metacham in. That I would consider something else. I would consider like Azumarill or Trevenant as an example, right? And for me, like if I look back on my tournament and I look back when I fought Trent the first time and he TO'd me in the winners top 8.
Yep.
For me, I was like really scared. I was really hesitant to bring in Trevenant because like Trevenant can get like really walled really badly, and he had an Umbreon, right? So versus like Sableye versus Umbreon is like not that bad. Like you land 2 returns, it puts it really low. Obviously, it depends on the IVs of the Umbreon and all that stuff, right? Versus Trevenant just gets like absolutely destroyed, right? But I realized after watching Iron Arrow play against Trent that I need to bring in Trevenant, right? It just makes so much sense against team. I need to bench Sableye, which is something that just like a mid-tournament adjustment that I need to make. So that was obviously depending on the other Pokemon that they have on their team, I might consider bringing some other Pokemon. Or sometimes you just make reads on how a player likes to play and try to make a prediction as well.
And so if you had to construct a new team to bring into, say, Milwaukee, where would you start?
Yeah, so for me, I would start with the top 8 of the most recent tournaments, right? So like for me, that like is probably the newest and freshest information. Obviously, the top 8 in Vancouver, and then the top 8 in the two previous European ones, and to see like where I think the meta is going to go. Either make like a hard meta read, which for me, I don't normally play it that way, but some people like to play it that way, and they make they end up coming out with a really nice team comp that ends up. But for me, I like to play like a lot of neutral matchups. So I would look at the top 8, look at PV Poke, and then start constructing my team. And then for me, when I practice, when it comes to like practicing, see how effective a team is, I actually practice against the top 8 of the previous tournament and kind of just run through it. I'm like, okay, so how does my team play against it? Play against a bunch of different players of like varying play styles to see how it performs.
And I think what you were talking about with play testing with Leandrew, I think finding a buddy to play test with is going to be huge for a lot of people looking to play their first regionals. I find just talking with other battlers is probably for me the best way to learn about PvP as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We've got some teams that have been sent in from Pallet Town members and people on Twitch, and we'd like your opinion on some of these teams. First, let's go with this one.
Okay, double flyers.
There we go. Yeah, double flyer in the Pidgeot and Talonflame. So, what do you think of double flyer in the evolving meta?
Yeah. So I think like I do like Talonflame a lot. I think it has a lot of play. Pidgeot, I think it definitely can have a really nice role. So, but first thing I look at this team. So for me, when I look at a team, I look the first thing I look at the team is like how weak is it versus Sableye, because like
Okay.
Sableye is the best safe switch in Open Great League,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like you're gonna, and a lot of people like to bring Sableye. I think like in some some of the data stuff from like practice tournaments is like it actually has now become the most common Pokemon on a team,
Sure.
right? So when I look at this team, I would look at, okay, first thing I notice is like it's very weak to Sableye safe switch, and then usually people bring Walrein and Registeel, so you just have to like learn to be able to play against a Sableye safe switch, and as well you can try to rely on getting alignment with Pidgeot, but none of these Pokemon necessarily have like that, have a high probability of winning the two shield against a lot of the core meta or a subset of against it. So that would be the thing I would look most against. But you obviously have a lot of answers to Registeel, right? You have the Talonflame, you have the Medicham, you have Swampert, you have Trev, right?
Yeah.
But the opposite is not as true with a Walrein. So that would be the thing I would consider. Certainly a very playable team, and a lot of people would definitely get thrown off by double flyers. Would definitely get thrown off by double flyers. And the Pidgeot could be a nice surprise pick for people that are bringing double ghost or bringing fighter and Sableye or whatnot. So that would that's something I would look at.
Do you have an adjustment that stands out to you that would handle that weakness to the Sableye switch?
Well, I think like a one particular thing that you could make is like changing Trevenant to Sableye. I think Trevenant is still like great
sense.
And still very strong. But that would probably be the first thing I'd look at. Someone saying Mandy instead of Pidgeot, and certainly Mandy serves a pretty similar role to Pidgeot, especially when it runs Air Slash. So
maybe Mandy instead of Trevor run Triple Flyer.
Triple Flyer would be very interesting. Very very interesting pick there. But this certainly would make someone very hesitant to bring a Sableye safe switch. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think like obviously people would can make adjustments there. So
and
okay, so Pinterest Flights.
Sorry, say it again.
Oh, so then here the Trevenant is like a really big concern
big problem,
for the team.
And
it's a huge reliance on Pidgeot. Yeah. Obviously, when you look at this, though, the Talonflame Trevenant matchup, that's like super bait dependent. So for me, I don't put like a lot of stock into that particular matchup, Trevenant versus Talonflame. Most people would say that it's a much more straightforward matchup as Talonflame to win versus the Trevenant. Certainly, Trevenant can win, but it's like unlikely you ever end up in a one shield even energy scenario against it unless you have like that's your counter. But then if that's your counter, then it's likely the Talonflame will just double shield anyways, and then come out with like a boosted 100 energy, so it would get the shield back and then have alignment. So, and then people would just play around it.
And that's great information because that's probably a step that a lot of battlers, probably I'll put myself in that category as well. Like being able to look at that and then put your own analysis on it. Like, okay, so Trevenant's probably not as big a deal because of this and this reason. I think learning that it's going to be a process, but like it's like amazing help for you in your team building skills.
Yeah, for sure. This matrix is very important to look at, but there's obviously the devils in the details are in the devil. The devils in the details, right?
Details and devil and all that. Let's go with this one next.
Okay.
There we go.
So, obviously, some things. Can I see the moveset on Primate? So, Night/Close Combat.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a very interesting team. So, I think there's this is a very the Primate is an interesting pick. I'm not necessarily sure. So for me, I would think like Primate's great. Don't get me wrong, but if you're gonna run this particular moveset, why not Surfetch instead of Primate? Just because like it has like a little bit more of a unpredictable moveset. They have very similar stats too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, a bit more unpredictable moveset. Obviously, once you get to later rounds, like all the movesets get revealed, right? Because like, eventually people will see you on stream and whatnot, or they may not. Like if it's not in not a stream tournament, but in a not stream tournament, then I think like Surfetch is just better than Primate, just because it's a little bit more unpredictable. Like especially if you're running this moveset. I guess if you're running Ice Punch for whatever reason, I guess to hit Trevenant, but
do you agree with this moveset on the Primate, or would you run Ice Punch instead of one of those?
This is probably the right moveset.
Sure.
I did probably no reason. I don't want to say no reason to run Ice Punch, but I'm trying to think of what else you hit Ice for besides the Trevenant. But you probably want to run Night Slash anyways, because like you need 2 moves to KO. It's not like you're gonna counter down the Trevenant.
Nidoqueen?
Close combat is Needle Queen. Yeah, Needle Queen for sure. Needle Queen would be a reason to it. Altaria is pretty uncommon in the meta, so but it's certainly something to take consideration. Altaria would actually be pretty good against this team. When you look at it, right? So like if someone had an Altaria, then they would almost certainly bring against this team. So the Ice Punch would be relevant there. And again, Sableye again. That's the first thing. That's always the first thing I look at is like how again you could, if you're comfortable with playing it and you get a lot of good practice in it, you're comfortable with the safe switch and be able to quick and know what you're going to switch into. Then I was actually talking to Wild Susan Boyle. I'm like I forget what particular Pokemon he was. He was like someone had knocked out. I think it was Jamar or something like that. Anyway, someone had knocked out, and I'm like, man, like every game, like you almost brought triple week to knocked out. And then he said to me, which is something insightful. I always like to listen and hear people's thoughts. He's like, when you're really weak to a Pokemon, it makes their lineup much more predictable.
Right.
So like you know what they're gonna bring and how they're gonna complement it around it, right? So it's like in some ways easier to plan against a team you're obviously weak against, and then like kind of eliminates these other Pokemon. So you're kind of like working. When you're simming or like thinking about your particular matchups, you just really got to think about like these 4 Pokemon instead of all 6. Because there's almost no chance that they don't bring that particular strong Pokemon.
So what do you think of a strategy of I have seen it done, intentionally allowing yourself to be weak to a Pokemon in order to like kind of reverse bench pressure, like you're daring them to bring that Pokemon? For sure. I don't think necessarily the first in an Open Great League tournament, not necessarily the first thing you should think about, but certainly that's a strategy that you can have if you have the appropriate farm down strategy. You have a Pokemon that like we've seen this when I showcase a lot of the APAC tournaments, they would bring a team ABA weak to a particular Pokemon, and then if they ran into that particular Pokemon lead, they would just stay and then go for the farm down and have that energy translate into some sort of usefulness later on. Yeah, right. One more thing about this team is that this trainer was also discussing the idea of Charizard instead of Talonflame with me. Thoughts on that?
Okay. What is? I guess like when someone's so when I've consulted a few people on their team, when they want to like bring a spicier version of a meta pick, first thing I ask them was like, what matchups does it pick up? Right.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like or what moveset are you gonna run that's gonna be that would give you a reason to run it. So like for example, if Dragon was a relevant typing in terms of offensively in the thing, then I would say like it makes sense to bring Charizard because then you have you have Dragon Breath. Or if you want like flying fast move, then it makes sense to it. But if you're gonna bring Fire Spin, Blast Burn, Dragon Claw, like I don't necessarily feel as comfortable. Obviously, you can bring whatever you want, but and at least some people guessing. But in that particular case, like I think you have to have a reason to. Not necessarily they can totally win it all. Don't get me wrong, but from a logical point of view, you have a reason why you want to swap out this meta pick with something spicier or off meta.
Yeah, so you just have to be able to articulate, what does this do better than the other Pokemon, and then in making that argument, would you just look at like the one shields, and would that be enough for you, or do you need to look at other shielding situations?
Yeah. So like, I think it depends on what you're bringing to the Pokemon. If you think a Pokemon has like, you need more fire, fast move, like no more fire one-shotting capabilities, right?
Yeah.
Like you feel like, Registeel can survive a flame charge from Talonflame and whatnot. Then in that case, like if you feel like it's more like a closer, then I would look at more of the Zero Shield matchups, right? And then I'll also ask them like, how are you setting up Charizard in this case to be your closer, right?
Yeah.
Or like whatever the scenario is, right? And then kind of like walk them through that. And there could be a reason to it, but you just need to be able to figure that if your goal is purely to win the match, right? Obviously, people have other goals, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't like running these like really meta picks because they like to like surprise their opponent, leave them a little bit guessing, and that's certainly still a consideration. Like I know like I was talking to somebody before Vancouver, and they brought Pachirisu, right? Because they're from that area where Pachirisu spawn, right? And that was like a really big factor for them, right? And I think like for it made a total sense in that case. Not that Pachirisu is a bad Pokemon, it's just more one dimensional. In that case, like it made sense to bring it, right? Because like it would bring you some degree of enjoyment. If you end up winning, it would be pretty awesome, right? So just for Cindy, like her Ember Ninetales, she obviously built a tremendous team around it. Like for example, like for when I won, no one's talking about the Pokemon I used, right? Because I used all a completely meta team, right? And like you know what I mean, like it was like no one was really talking about it, right? So it made obviously having particular Pokemon or might be of value to you.
Did Cindy discuss with you her reasons for Ember K9?
I think Cindy came over with her team independently. We discussed some things in regards to in matchups. I think she talked about this when she had Ember K9 from ADL. So she had I think like Fire was like, especially with the rise of Arachnid, and plus like Fire was really strong in the French regional with Eldex. I keep mixing up it's Idex or Eldex, but Eldex running Talonflame and just like running through the tournament with it. So we saw the Fire, like the Fire was going to be very strong in regards to it. And then the Ember versus Fire Fan, it's probably just more of a factor of like more fast move pressure, and then as well already having it TM'd there and being comfortable with it.
We won't go too much more into Cindy's team because I would like to get her on the stream too. We can't make any promises, people. But we will reach out to her as well. I'd love to get her thoughts. This is the next team.
Oh, wow. A lot of normal. This is So this is where you wouldn't ever dare to bring Sableye versus this team. And certainly I think normal can be really, really, really strong here. This is an interesting this team. If I saw it, it definitely would take me a little bit to try to
break down what's happening.
Yeah, to break down what's happening here. Yeah, because there's certainly quite a bit going on. with this team. So like I think like the first thing that when I look at this team is like it has like a tongue as its Swampert answer. But even then, like, depending on the team composition, it might be more challenging to bring in. So,
Tapu Fini would be Swampert, right? If it's not running Sludge Wave.
I think that matchup is probably really bait dependent as well. Because I think like I guess it depends if it's Shadow or not. Because I think I guess it gets moves faster, so it just would depend on the matchup. So like here, like when I look at it, I wouldn't be too worried about Pidgeot, even though Pidgeot is very good against this team. The knockdown matchup is very close. So the Pidgeot I wouldn't necessarily be concerned. The Nidoqueen matchup. See, like here, the Nidoqueen versus AWAC matchup is like that particular matchup. I would look at it and be like, okay, like how bait dependent is this matchup? And so obviously, it's extremely bait dependent in this particular matchup, right? So like you kind of want to learn how to play it. So like for me, I would consider AWAC favorable in this matchup, but obviously if they land. So first off, the thing I would check here is like, okay, how much does the Earth Power actually do to an AWAC? So
and the answer is 73%.
It does a pretty good amount, but like you would live the first one, so that's a consideration there. And then what depends on what your backline is, would determine what kind of shielding scenario you would want to play out against an AWAC. And as well, if they're saying AWAC versus Nidoqueen, then there's a potential reason why you might need AWAC for the backline as well.
And I know I'm starting to ask like questions that are really difficult to answer. So if that's the case for any of these questions, just absolutely feel free to let us know. But then I'm thinking, where would the line fall of like you're looking at this matchup, you're seeing Earth Power does X amount. At what point do you go, okay, I can deal with that versus okay, I think I need to just find something else?
So in this case, I would deal with it. I don't think it's like as a concern of a matchup. So like I'll give you another example in my particular tournament. I had Registeel. So I had seen this matchup: Registeel versus Shadow Nidoqueen. If the Shadow Nidoqueen, which usually does shields up, goes and is like in the lead, for example, goes straight Earth Power, you actually win with Registeel. As long as you throw it decent timing, because you outpace to the second Focus Blast, and the first Earth Power obviously doesn't KO or doesn't put into farm down range. Obviously, in the true Zero Shield matchup, an experienced player would know to Poison Fang first, then Earth Power to be able to win that matchup. So that's an example of like, okay, I know I'm weak to it, but I can play around that matchup. So. For that one, I would actually consider that matchup favorable. It's way more straightforward to play it as the AWAC than the Nidoqueen. Bait dependency is still a consideration. It might get iffy if it's like ends up in the one shield matchup, then you play a guessing game. But it's like an easier guessing game as the AWAC than is as the Nidoqueen.
And so, do you see any issue with number 2, 3, and 4 on this list being such meta Pokemon?
So 3, I would actually be hesitant to bring Registeel into this team, right? Because it shows that like beating Scrafty, but it depends on the shielding scenarios, right? It depends on so like if you say switch a Registeel and someone had Scrafty in the back, they almost for sure would bring in Scrafty to counter switch it, right? Obviously, unless they had like AWAC or Diggersby into it, right? And plus AWAC and Diggersby are like pretty hard counters to Registeel, so I wouldn't be as concerned in that matchup. And the Lickitung matchup can be really annoying for Registeel, so I would actually consider this team pretty favorable against Registeel.
Yeah, great. Okay, so this is all fantastic stuff. So glad to.
And then the Talonflame one, I wouldn't be as concerned as well, because Tapu is very strong against the AWAC matchup. It, again, is bait dependent. It needs to land. It's a much more straightforward matchup for AWAC because they need to land the Brave Bird in order to win that match.
Yeah. That's fantastic. All right, so next team, Shadow AWAC. I'm liking that.
Yeah. Shadow AWAC is very very nice pick here. So again, like for me, again, first thing I look at is like how weak is it to Sableye, right? Yeah. So Sableye is I mean, my team in India is also weak to Sableye, but you just have to take that consideration because I think that's like the number one thing you're gonna have to, the most common thing you're gonna have to like deal with in the tournament, right?
In the current meta anyway.
At least in the current meta, and the AWAC can beat Sableye, but again, it's a bait dependent matchup. Depends on so like for example here, if I was playing Sableye versus a Shadow AWAC lead, I would be totally comfortable going down a shield in this matchup because I know the energy on Sableye can go into the next Pokemon, no matter what it is, right? Like if it's a Azu, which would be the worst case scenario, like 2 returns like almost KO in Azu, right? So you would likely get the shield back. So in that, when I'm looking at those lead scenarios, like that's something I consider.
Yeah.
If I think, for example, they have Umbreon or like Diggersby or something else in the back that can resist both the fast moves and one of the charge moves, then that's like that's much more of a concern on whether or not what kind of shielding scenarios you want to be able to play out.
Sure. So then, do you have any suggestions for adjustments on this team?
Okay, let's see what's this team is week 2. So like Talonflame's probably going to be pretty high up on this.
I like that coverage and that bulk.
Yeah, that coverage and bulk is well, actually, yeah.
Oh, Jellicent.
So it actually shows. Yeah, so I wouldn't be overly worried about Jellicent in this. So it's very weak to ghost types, which we already knew. I guess Trevenant is the thing is here. Like even the Trevenant versus Nidoqueen matchup, like I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that big matchup. I think it's like way more easy to play the Nidoqueen. Obviously, depends on shields and whatnot, but I wouldn't actually be too concerned with that. So this team actually wouldn't be too concerned about a lot of the threats here. At least the first 4 threats, like Jelly, Haunter, Altaria. You should play against them. You should practice against them. Probably more so the Altaria, but you don't expect too many of them to appear on the team just because the other Pokemon like Walrein and Registeel scare them away. The Swampert matchup here, Swampert is definitely strong here. It has like 3 positive matchups. Can play against the Azu, and then it has play against the Medicham. So that's something that I would like take off and say like, okay, I need to practice against a lot of Swampert teams, a lot of common Swampert cores. I wouldn't be worried about Koforigis, Noctowl, Quagsire, like pretty far down the list before you would actually get concerned about something else. So then here, when I look at that, okay, my notes would be, okay, I need to play against a lot of Swamperts.
Yeah.
That's very challenging for me to deal with. And then as well, then I would start playing against like some of the top common teams to see what other weaknesses come out of when you actually play these matchups. Because right now it's like taking the results from the Zero and Shield, even energy, full health type scenarios. But what actually happens when you play against full teams of 6 and see what other things come into play.
Something I notice here is that Trevenant Swampert is a pretty common combination, and together those 2 Pokemon are hard countering 4 of your 6. Is that something to take note of?
Yeah. So certainly it's something to play against and to factor in. Something like if someone brought that core, then it would be
tough to deal with.
It would be tough to deal with, right? So in that case, like if it's like if you see that really common, like then maybe you bring a flyer in, right? Instead of one Pokemon. But you gotta see what of those cores, what other picks they have, and what ends up being the weak point.
Yeah, sure.
I also tell people, because like this is a common thing. Before a tournament starts, or like the days leading up to a day leading up to the tournament, like you'll get rumors of like someone's gonna run this really spicy pick and this totally out there line, and people are like, say I say Tribird for example, like talking about Como, which I think is a very strong pick, right? A tough pick to bring, but it's a very strong pick. Even if your team has like a really obvious weakness to like an off-meta Pokemon, like you just also got to think about like what are the probabilities that you're going to run into this trainer, right? Are you really going to like weaken your team in so many other categories or like across the board just to account for this like, you know, one of 60 players that you might play against? So that's something that to
keep in mind,
right? So yeah. Like again, you'll hear it be like, oh man, someone's gonna run. Like for example, my friend Pete, he ran a Salazzle in Indy. And my team gets absolutely destroyed by Salazzle. Like Salazzle would be a really tough pick for me to play against. But for me, I didn't even bother scrimming against it. If I end up against a Salazzle, I'll just have to deal with it. But I can't like spend like half my brain power trying to beat this one, figure out how to beat this one Pokemon or adjust my team to beat this one Pokemon when the odds of it running into it are going to be slim. And when I do run into it, I'll just have to deal with it. Because like if I spend so much capacity trying to account for this one Pokemon, then likelihood I wouldn't even make it that far in the tournament. So
got another kind of really general question that might be tough to answer, which is how much of the meta do you want to look at and focus on? And we can kind of focus on the Great League if you want to.
So I think you look at like the most common picks. Like there's lots of usage reports on where some common picks, and you want to make sure that you have a plan for each of them, and then just practicing, do that real world practice against the most common not the most common teams, the teams that we just saw. To make sure that you can account for it. There, like people do make adjustments. Like we don't see like repeat teams come in every tournament, right? Like we saw, I think it was like Cress win the first tournament, right? I don't think we've seen a Cress in the final since, right? So
I believe you're right.
Right, so it's not something that you just want to play against it to make sure you're comfortable with it, and then as well to make sure you cover off the top picks, and then just go from there.
Yeah, sure. All right, what's the next team we've got? Actually, I think there was a team in this list that had Como-O in it. Let's see if it was this one. No, it wasn't, but it's got another interesting pick in Dedenne.
Yeah. I do like Dedenne a lot. Someone actually asked me what their thoughts on Dedenne. I think there's a lot of teams that are very weak to Dedenne, right? It has that... it has lots of coverage, the flying coverage, the fighting coverage, the dark
Sableye
coverage. What thing is, Sableye, which is really nice. But the Sableye matchup is like, again, like can be kind of iffy, right? Because Dedenne is very glassy against it, right? So I don't think it's like as easy to say switch Dedenne into a Sableye as in the obviously in the zero shields. It's totally fine to do it, but like. The Shadow Claws in returns would like almost KO. It probably would KO Dedenne. So that's something to think about as well. So like on paper, it would show it does okay against Sableye, but it's like bait dependent. Fast moves don't do a lot of pressure here. So here look at how weak you are. Sableye, Arachnid does a fine job. Dedenne does an okay job. It's neutral against G-Fist, so you'd almost for sure expect a Sableye safe switch, right? There's like no reason not to. Then you kind of just simulate the rest of it to see what kind of holes play into it. It's a pretty nice team though. This would be so like here it has like a when I look, this is kind of like what I expected to, because like there wasn't like any like super obvious like meta core breakers on this team. Tapu Fini, I don't expect a lot of them, but it certainly can play. Gliscor or Gligar, if someone brought a Gligar and made it all the way to the finals, that would be so tremendous. That would be pretty insane to do it. I think against Slazzle. Lickitung, I guess Lickitung you would look into it. You have like okay play though, right? Like Walrein is fine. So again, for me, I simulate the Walrein Lickitung matchup. So like if they end up going straight Power Whip, how does that matchup play out? it's very close against. In this case, I ran a Shadow Wall Rain, so it's like really close in the one shield. If they go straight Power Whip, obviously the bait depends. So here they go straight Body Slam. It's like really close in the one shield
2
here.
HP.
So yeah, so it just depends on the situation that you want to play out and how you want to play it. So Lickitung is something that you would probably prep against, but I don't think you would be like super concerned because the Wall Rain Arachnid matchup is fine. Metacham and GFIS obviously beat it, and then Dedenne is probably just a slightly negative matchup, so I wouldn't be overly concerned. But this is a pretty nice team. I'm not gonna lie, this is a very nice team. The Registeel, you got to think about like what else you're pairing with it and whether or not you actually need to bring in. Is something to consider. Like if someone had a Sableye Registeel core, then you almost have to be able to play against that core, which would probably be the most common thing I would think about there.
Panic is saying look out for Wob. Is that a consideration?
No,
I don't know if he's joking.
Like I obviously, I like certainly you would factor it in, sure, but like I'm sure even the Wobbuffet GFS matchup is really cool. Like it doesn't have like any dominant matchups here. I wouldn't be overly concerned about any particular matchups that Wobbuffet would bring here. I wouldn't be overly concerned.
All right, I think we've got a couple more. Let's go with...
Yeah, someone's saying Altaria can beat Dedenne with baiting.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Well, Dedenne is very classy, so it's certainly a nice pick, and in the right hands can be very good. But you have to be a pretty skillful trainer to be able to make it work, and certainly you can.
All right.
Okay.
This is the Coma O team.
This is the Coma O team. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So first thing here, I see like Wall Rain is very good against this team, right? I'm sure even the Dedenne matchup is like bait dependent. Maybe not because it gets discharged pretty quickly, but it would put a lot of work versus Dedenne. So you expect a lot of Wall Rain. Expect a lot of Sableye versus this team. Yes, like the Swampert would be okay here. Obviously, the Trev would be a little bit concerning here. This is a interesting team. Like you obviously need the Nidoqueen and GFS, or like you need Poison and Steel to cover for Charm A9 because Charm A9 is like pretty strong against the rest of the team. This is a decent team. Again, I would look at the team builder, see what weaknesses come out, but for sure, Wall Rain, Shadow Wall Rain would be pretty tough for this team.
It would be the biggest one
to play against.
It looks like Como-O is probably Shadow Nidoqueen is probably the weakest to Wall Rain. Is that what you would look at to replace, or is there somewhere else that you'd look?
First off, on this particular team, if someone came out the team or order this team, I would just try it in practice and see where you can align Como. I think Como is nice. I just don't think like Dragon offensively is like not that great in the meta, right? Like
sure.
Just because of the steal in Wall Rain. But it's like close combat is really nice, and if you're confident that you can land the baits or mind read the opponent, then I think it can be can be interesting.
Jolt is saying pair it with another counter user.
Oh man, but then you would have to like pair it with like a lot of steel and poison. I don't know. Did Tribird have a counter user?
I don't remember. Tribird, you can tell us.
I don't necessarily like it just becomes it makes it if you had a counter user, then I guess it would make it a little bit less bait dependent, but Como is like
there we go.
Medi. Okay, in Medi. Okay, yeah, then obviously you would have to have a lot to cover for charm weakness, which you can have, right? Which you can have, but Como is really really interesting Pokemon. But for me, I have a very difficult time with like bait dependent matchups. But if you're
Sure.
confident you can run these bait dependent matchups, then I think it'd be really nice.
All right, one more. We're at the home stretch, and that is this one here, a Lurantis on the team.
Lurantis. That's a okay. Let's see. There's this team here. This is a double flyer team, right?
It is a double flyer team, yeah.
Yeah. Lurantis I think is a who was it? I think it was like Stone Collection. Ran it in Frankfurt.
Okay.
Ran Lurantis. It's a really interesting Pokemon, right? Its Chartreuse are super potent to the meta. You kind of need the double flyers though, right? Because like this team is otherwise pretty weak to Trev.
Okay.
Right? Because like it would.
Yep.
Lurantis wouldn't have very much chance. It would beat Swampert.
Yeah.
And G-Fist beat Metacham. So it's necessary to bring some counters in. Trev Reggie would be it'd be really difficult to bring Reggie versus team. Like if you had Trev and like your only anti-flyer was Registeel, then you would have to bring it. You would have to bring it, right? Because or not bring it all, right? Not bring that core at all, but it would certainly play some mind games here. Running Snarl, I'm not so sure Snarl in the meta. I guess it gives you a better G-Fist matchup. Like if the opponent had G-Fist,
sure,
then say switching Mandibuzz would make way more sense against the G-Fist, and also have a better matchup versus Reggie, but still pretty bad matchup. So
yeah, so you advocate for Air Slash in the current meta?
Yeah, and then as well, like Talonflame would also be pretty tough for this team, because if they have Talonflame, for sure they're gonna have lots of Swampert answers. So that's something to practice against a lot, right? Obviously, you have the Swampert, but you would need to make sure that you understand the matchups, Mandibuzz versus Talonflame, when you need to throw, when you need to shield, how you would play out that matchup. Otherwise, Talonflame could be really problematic for that team, right? Like we saw a lot in. I learned a lot watching the French regionals, like seeing Eldex play Talonflame, and he was willing to give up. He was basically willing to shield Talonflame and run through the entire team when their only answer was Swampert.
Okay.
And then he played like he was up 1 shield to 0. And he ended up losing switch, and he just came in Talonflame, and then I think they had like Registeel in the lead and Swampert in the back, so he just farmed down the Sableye, Brave Bird, the Shadow Swampert, and then just took out the Registeel. So that would be something that you would need to factor in to play against.
That sounds like a very fun strategy. I've always loved Incinerate users.
Yeah. Like every game, it was like shield advantage Talonflame just swept the team, even when they had Swampert, which is a great answer, but it has no like fast move pressure against it.
Yeah.
So that would be something I would consider. And then as well, like Walrein here is like good, but not amazing, but it's safe against the team. So like it depends on how much pressure there is against Metacham there. So we see the Registeel here. That's the meta score card, right? So
it goes
Walrein,
in moments. I'm trying to scroll down, and it's like, I'm trying to sleep. Here we go.
Sorry to struggle here.
Okay, we got counter users are our top 3.
Hit one top here. Yeah. Counter users can be, especially when you're running Snarl Mandibuzz, I should say, can be challenging here. I don't think it's like as obvious like day one that Metachamps is as strong, because like you don't know the moveset on Mandibuzz, right? You have 2 flyers, right, which can be a concern. It depends on the moveset you have on Metachamp. If you have Ice Punch, then you feel more comfortable in that matchup. If you don't have Ice Punch, then obviously it's a little bit more problematic. And then obviously you see the Walrein being pretty safe. Even though Walrein Skarmory matchup, that like Skarmory matchup is probably a bait dependent. It probably requires Skarmory to throw the Brave Bird in the one shield. So it's not as I would consider like pretty safe. So if you had like Walrein Double Ghost or Walrein Sableye and a strong flyer, then it would make this team very difficult to play against.
Okay, cool. We are done. Thank you so much for joining me, King. That was just a wealth of information. I'm always super impressed with that ability to just look at a line of 6 and have this database of, okay, these are the Pokemon that, do the best and, struggle the most against it, etc., etc. And that just comes with time, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at PV Poke, and there's lots of resources there, lots of people that are willing to help out, and just discuss with your friend. Practice, right? Like I think it's a mix. Like practice, PV Poke, try to figure out what ultimately works for you, and then whatever team you end up bringing, like you just have to be confident with it, right? Like, and don't get so spooked out on again, like hear things that you hear or someone's like bringing a crazy pick or whatnot. I think like some people like I think people saw that Watsu's Moil had Toxicrow. They're like, oh man, how do I account for Toxicrow? I'm like, well, you'll figure it out if you end up getting paired with one Toxicrow in the 60 people in this tournament, right? So you just have to figure it out. So just come with confidence and don't make adjustments, and then you can just keep learning from it, right? Keep learning from every tournament.
Totally.
Keep learning better, right? When you enter that one tournament, it's not gonna. It could be the last tournament you play in, but it's very unlikely it's gonna be the last tournament you ever play in, right? So if you get O2, then that's not a big deal, right? Just learn and get better.
Yeah,
and just keep improving.
And I'm all about like improvement in PvP happens so slowly that you actually can't really see it happening as it's happening. You only really notice when you say you've been at it for a while and you go against a new battler and you're like, oh right, I think that was actually pretty easy.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, I learn something from every battle I showcase, every stream. Like I reference like pretty much like every stream that I saw in the regional tournament, despite like the thousands of battles, the hundreds of thousands of battles I've seen. I just learn like a little bit of nuance every time. You got to be open-minded to where you can improve on.
Yeah, I love that word, open-minded. If you watching do want to learn more from some of the best in the world, we have had other interviews with past regionals winners. We've got Logan Rocket and we've got Aeris, who won the Liverpool and Frankfurt championships respectively. They are on the Pallet Town PvP YouTube channel. You can just look that up on YouTube. We've also got tomorrow night on this channel, we are running The Ring, which is our King of the Hill style format where a carryover champion takes on a series of new competitors in a best of 5 in the current Sylph Arena meta. We've also got a whole bunch of other streamers that stream on here regularly. Make sure to follow and check them out. We are going to be rating Final Boss AJ. Thank you once again, King. Thank you everyone for joining us. Do you have anything to plug that you want people to come check out?
No, just thanks for interviewing me, and thanks for putting out all the great content.
Absolutely my pleasure. Let's do this once my mouse finally catches up. We will commence that raid. There it is.